previously, which was about migrants getting priority treatment at various NHS trusts, because some of Keir Starmer's own words will come back to haunt him again that might depict him as a weak leader, to a prior statement by Keir Starmer, which you've probably been waiting for. The crux of this video is, has Keir Starmer unwittingly confirmed that he is a weak leader by his own estimations and previous descriptions of other people in the fallout of these corruption allegations against one of his ministers, Tulip Siddiq? Well, in this video, I'll show you something that might make you think just that, but I'll also try to give you a balanced view that might lead you to think that that is a bit of a stretch and perhaps a little bit unfair, but you can make up your own mind. We'll also talk a little bit about potential cover-ups going on, the devastation in the economy, and previous Labour MPs getting into some serious trouble. So before we go any further, if you are new to me, or even if you're not new to me, I'm Daniel Smith, a barrister, and I help you to understand law, news, current events, and how they apply to you, and I depend on you, the viewer. I am not a big media company, so I really appreciate it if you'd hit subscribe down below on my mission to 1 million subscribers. So thank you very much for doing that. So what are we talking about here? So if you haven't seen it in the news already, and you couldn't really make this up to be any more ridiculous sounding if you really tried, but the UK's anti-corruption minister has had criminal charges filed against her in Bangladesh for corruption. As I say, you can't really make this up. Now, on the one hand, you might think that this sounds like an open-shut case, but on the other hand, there may be an element to it that may be slightly unfair. We'll come back to that in a moment. But let's look first of all of what she's accused of and a little bit more of those details. So, throughout all of this, Keir Starmer was called upon to sack Tulip Siddiq as the anti-corruption minister after she was named in a corruption investigation by Bangladesh to the tune of 3.9 billion with a B pounds from infrastructure projects around Bangladesh. She's responsible in the UK for tackling corruption of the UK financial markets, and she's alleged to have brokered a deal with Russia in 2013 which overinflated the price of nuclear power plant in Bangladesh. But the balancing and somewhat counter-argument to this is that a source close to Siddiq, so it may be Siddiq herself, is said to have reported to the BBC, so discreetly to the BBC, and said that these were trumped up, made up charges, and said that these allegations were completely politically motivated and designed to damage her aunt. Channel 4's fact check refers to the Sunday Times report that she lived in a flat in North London which had been given to her teenage sister, representing the Hasina administration, and the Financial Times also said that she used an apartment in King's Cross which was given to her by Abdul Mutallif, another associate of the members of the Awami League party in Bangladesh. So here's the element that may be a little bit unfair, or may not, depending on what you personally think, and potentially depending on the findings in Bangladesh. But this may be her only link to everything that was going on in Bangladesh, in that she was given this flat in North London and lived in another one. What did she say about it? Well, she said, "In recent weeks, I've been the subject of media reporting, much of it inaccurate, about my financial affairs and my family's links to a former government in Bangladesh. I'm clear that I've done nothing wrong," she said. "However, for the avoidance of doubt, I would like you to independently establish the facts about these matters. I will obviously ensure you have all the information you need to do so." Keir Starmer's response was multifaceted, really. He said that she'd acted entirely properly and that he had confidence in her, and the Science Secretary told Sky News that I think she's done exactly the right thing. She's referred herself for investigation, and that inquiry needs to go through. Adding, "I think the right way to go through this now is to allow the authorities to investigate. We've given more powers to those authorities to do independent investigations, and you know full well when it comes to Keir Starmer, he will listen to what the authorities say." So that's where the balancing act comes here. Now, Keir Starmer, in full support, said that he had full confidence in Tulip Siddiq as she was facing calls to resign. Now, this again may seem a little bit unfair. One of the reasons I don't like politics, because a lot of these things may seem unfair, and I'll show you why in a minute, because some of Keir Starmer's own previous words will come back to haunt him again that might, in his own words, depict him as a weak leader in light of all of this going on. However unfair or fair it may be, we don't really know until full investigations are carried out, but nonetheless, he said he had full confidence in her as she faced calls to resign, of course, before she actually resigned. resigned. So just before we go through this letter and what Keir Starmer said that might convince you that he would consider himself a weak leader by his own comparisons, we'll come back to that in just a moment. Okay, so you've probably gathered that I take a keen interest in the news and politics, what's going on around the world and around us, and how it affects you and me. And I'm pleased to see that you do too, judging by the viewing stats on my channel here. And so, because of the interest in the news, I'm very pleased to introduce you to Ground News, which collects and aggregates news from around the world in both an app and a website. And more importantly, it shows you whether there's any political bias in the news that you are reading. It also provides you with a credibility score so you know whether the sources you are reading are accurate or not, and it even provides you an indication as to ownership, whether it's a small news company or owned by some massive media conglomerate. You can search by keyword or by a URL of an article that you've already read, and it will give you a breakdown and a biased comparison of the story that you are reading. Taking, for example, this story about Keir Starmer attacking what he calls the spread of lies on the grooming gangs scandal. Media coverage on the left focused on Keir Starmer criticising online misinformation and saying that those spreading lies are not interested in the victims, whereas media coverage to the right focused on Elon Musk calling for the imprisonment of Keir Starmer and accusing him of being complicit in these crimes during a series of social media posts. Taking some of the headlines by way of example, left-leaning outlet NPR has the headline "UK leader Starmer slams lies and misinformation after attacks from Elon Musk." And from Channel 4, Starmer hits back at Musk's lies, defends record on child abuse. Looking at some right-wing headlines, for example, bare naked Islam, mainstream media and the left freaking out over Elon Musk's exposure of the Great British Cover-Up. And from the Daily Caller, Musk completely derails UK political establishment, accuses PM's party of a cover-up. But from time to time, there will always be some stories that are disproportionately covered by the left or the right. That is why Ground News has a blind spot feature to let you know when the news is being disproportionately represented to give you the other side of the picture. For example, taking the story about Labour Minister Stephen McKinnon will not run for Liberal leadership, out of 55 news sources, only 5% are covered by right-wing media. So to make sure you don't get partial or biased news fed to you, why don't you take advantage of my excellent deal as they're a partner to my channel, which is 40% off, that's 40% off, unlimited access to the world's news. So the next time you want to read about really important issues that affect you directly, you can be sure that you've got the full picture. So back to this resignation issue and Tulip Siddiq's resignation letter. Now, you may feel, having heard what I've said, that this is a little bit unfair, although on the other hand, you may form the view that she knew exactly that this was a benefit from the alleged corruption in Bangladesh and that it's only right that she resigns out of a principle as the anti-corruption minister for the UK, as she has now done so. That is a matter for you to decide in your own subjective opinion, which you are entitled to hold. Her letter says as follows: to Keir Starmer, Dear Prime Minister, thank you for the confidence you've shown me in recent weeks. I'm grateful to your independent advisor on ministerial standards for acting with speed and thoroughness in response to my self-referral and for giving me the opportunity to share the full details of my finances and living arrangements, both present and historic. As you know, having conducted an in-depth review of the matter at my request, Sir Laurie's confirmed that I've not breached the ministerial code. So again, you might take this into account when you consider your views about her. As he notes, she goes on, there is no evidence to suggest that I've acted improperly in relation to the properties I've owned or lived in, nor to suggest that any of my assets derive from anything other than legitimate means. My family connections are a matter of public record, and when I became minister, I provided full details of my relationships and private interests to the government. After extensive consultation with officials, I was advised to state my declaration of interest that my aunt is the former Prime Minister of Bangladesh and to recuse myself from matters relating to Bangladesh to avoid any perception of a conflict of interest. I want to assure you that I acted and have continued to act with full transparency and on the advice of officials on these matters. However, it's clear that continuing in my role as Economic Secretary to the Treasury is likely to be a distraction from the work of government. My loyalty is and always will be to this Labour government and the programme of national renewal and transformation it has embarked upon. I've therefore decided to resign from my ministerial position. So you may conclude there that if she's been investigated, she's been open and transparent, she's shown everything that anyone would need to look at, they've not found anything wrong, and she's, just because she has this property, she's been caught up in this and potentially creates an untenable impression for someone that holds the office of an anti-corruption minister in the UK. On the other hand, you may feel that she knew full well about these properties, she knew that she was getting the benefit, she knew what was going on. You may very well think that those potentially are within the allegations, but nonetheless, she has resigned, despite Keir Starmer saying that he had full confidence in her, which is very often code for "I will support you, but I have my concerns." Now, Keir Starmer responded to this letter, but there's a bit of a difference, as has been noted online, between his letter of response to Tulip Siddiq and previously Louise Haigh. Louise Haigh, first, his response to this was, "Thank you for all you've done to deliver this government's ambitious transport agenda. You've made huge strides to take our rail system back into the public ownership through creation of Great British Railways, investing £1 billion in our vital bus services and lowering costs for motorists. I know you still have a huge contribution to make in the future. All best wishes." So very short and somewhat sweet letter to Louise Haigh from Keir Starmer, but the one to Tulip Siddiq is a little bit longer. Now, the reason for it may just be a longer letter, but you may feel that there was more of a meaning behind this letter. He says, "Thank you for your letter. It was with sadness that I accept your resignation from your ministerial role. I want to thank you for your commitment during your time as Economic Secretary to the Treasury, including spearheading the rollout of banking hubs and opening our 100th site, leading our thinking on financial inclusions, and contributing to the success of the Chancellor's first Mansion House speech. In accepting your resignation, I also wish to be clear that Sir Laurie, as independent advisor, assured me that he found no breach of the ministerial code, no evidence of financial improprieties on your part. I want to thank you for your self-referring to the independent advisor and for your full cooperation for the establishment of the facts. I appreciate that to end ongoing distraction from delivering our agenda, you've made the difficult decision to be clear. The door always remains open for you going forward." Now, as a former head of the CPS, Keir Starmer will have a sort of prosecutor's attitude to all of these things. So on the one hand, you may feel that Keir Starmer, as the previous Director of Public Prosecutions, will seek out any wrongdoing wherever he sees it and ensure that it's prosecuted properly. On the other hand, you may feel that, well, it's part of his own cabinet, he's going to support them, etc. But on the balance of probabilities, it's more likely, to be fair, that Keir Starmer would look at wrongdoing for what it is, if there were any wrongdoing, and ensure that that's followed up appropriately. In this case, the letter confirms that there were no findings of wrongdoing whatsoever. However, then we come to a prior statement by Keir Starmer, which you've probably been waiting for. The crux of this video is a previous statement by Keir Starmer. Now, this really encapsulates why I don't like politics, because previous statements come back to bite you, and statements in a political arena are largely the to and fro, the cut and thrust of politics between the parties. So you can only really take this for what it is. It is a shot at the other party when Conservative was in power, and this by Keir Starmer. But there's nothing to say that you can't then use those words to sort of establish a baseline for what Keir Starmer should really think in this current position with the allegations and this cloud over Tulip Siddiq. Listen to this.
Well, the big question for the Prime Minister is why he was so weak to appoint him in the first place. The second question for the Prime Minister is why he didn't sack him. And now it's left to Dominic Raab to resign, and the Prime Minister hasn't acted. And it's that indecision, it's that weakness, I think, that goes to the heart, not just of this Prime Minister, but of 13 years now of failure. I don't know why Dominic Raab thinks Dominic Raab in the middle of a cost of living crisis.
And he goes on to say, I don't know why in the middle of a cost of living crisis, that he wants people to focus on his resignation. Now, arguably, very, very different situation, very different facts, very different background, different person, different allegations, different reasons. But at the same time, his view there is still saying that the Prime Minister, the then Prime Minister, was weak to appoint Dominic Raab in the first place, weak to not then sack him, etc., and overall weak as a leader as a result. One might make the same argument and draw parallels with the current situation, albeit, as I say, different scenarios, different people, different allegations, etc., which might make that an unfair comparison. But at the same time, if you were to use the same analogy, the same reasoning of a leader should just sack somebody if they are in that position with this cloud over them, you may well draw that conclusion. But ultimately, that is Keir Starmer's own perspective. Now, as a brief callback to something that I reported on previously, which was about migrants getting priority treatment at various NHS trusts, the previous page that I linked to was this one here. It was called the 987 Inclusion Health Programme. Now, I don't know whether that was still active at the time or exactly how people qualified for that. All we know is that it did apply to homeless people, vulnerable people, including drug addicts, and of course illegal migrants, and so on. And this confirmed that if they were referred on this programme, that they would attend A&E and they would, at the main reception in AEC, they are quickly seen by the AEC nurses, usually within 15 minutes, who prepared blood tests, other simple assessments, etc., before contacting someone else for more thorough examinations and then onto treatment if necessary. But since this hit the media, and dare I say it, with some of my videos drawing a spotlight to these issues, because people did ask the question, I looked into it, and there were a number of trusts operating similar things. Very shortly after that, that page is no longer to be found. So it's either that was an old thing that wasn't being used anymore, or it wasn't an old thing, it was being used, but they've decided to cancel it, and therefore it's no longer on the website and it's been removed, or it's still going on, but they've removed it from the website because they don't want people to read it. I'm not quite sure which, but some people call that a bit of a cover-up, allegedly. So if that is the case, that's a bit sad that they feel that they need to cover these things up, because no one is saying that this should absolutely not happen, but it is open to criticism. If this is happening and undocumented migrants are seen within 15 minutes as a priority over other patients who are waiting many hours in A&E, many people have genuine and valid criticisms for that, and they are open and entitled to have those criticisms. But in the meantime, in a similar vein to ministers resigning, Rachel Reeves is now facing huge pressure as the economic outlook for Britain is not great, and she's now facing potential pressure to step down. And when I read headlines like this, it's a bit of a hint and perhaps a bit of a clue. Who could replace Rachel Reeves? The runners and the riders. So when you have headlines looking at who might potentially step into her shoes, it's an indication potentially that there's rumblings that she might actually face pressure to step down. And in videos coming up, I will talk a little bit about Ivor Kaplan, the former Labour MP who was stung by paedophile hunters and is now arrested on suspicion of child sex offences. More about that in another video if you subscribe to the channel. And also 2/3 of major retailers warning that they're going to raise prices because of Labour budgets, and pressure on Rachel Reeves continues. So subscribe for those. Those are coming up next. But let me know what you think about this whole situation with Keir Starmer. Do you think it's an unfair assessment that his previous words in a broadly similar situation, whereas his own words about a leader being weak to appoint someone and then not sack them when they are facing such pressures, or are they too disparate to fairly draw comparisons between the two? Let me know what you think, and also let me know what you think about Tulip Siddiq as well. I will link this Channel 4 fact check in the description below. Read through what happened and get a more detailed understanding of it. Don't just rely on my video. But when you get a detailed understanding, let me know in the comments whether you think it's fair that she having this flat and having lived in another flat, which may be a result of what's happened in Bangladesh and now facing criminal charges in Bangladesh for corruption, whether you think that is really a stain on her reputation in the UK. Let me know what you think. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. And as always, thank you for watching.